enjoying Evo? Pretty much? That sounded like you was way into Evo. Like, there you go. Yeah. I'm Chris Slate. I'm with XSplit. We've been working with the FGC, supporting it for over a decade now, doing all sorts of cool stuff. But we're not here to talk about XSplit. We're here to talk about the very cool people here. We have Mr. Maximilian, dude, started YouTube in 2007. Now have 1.1 million subs. I looked it up. I did my research.
Hello.
The Daily Fighting Net video channel. Maximilian, dude.
Thank you.
You know him from Cross Counter TV, sartorially gifted, Pog champ. Mr. Gootecks, how you doing, man?
Doing much better. Doing great. Can you guys hear me okay? Do I have to, I don't know how much I have to actually like speak up.
Do the whole gamut.
All right.
To project for 3 hours straight.
Project.
Finally,
okay.
I got the god tier legend, the king, the final boss, pillar of the community. I knew you'd like, I know him, so I can get away with that. Spooky. So we got a building full of experts on streaming, on tournaments, all sorts of stuff. But I wanted to kick things off talking to you, Spooky. There's a whole documentary about Spooky, so, you know, we're not going to run through the whole history too much. If you haven't already seen the documentary about Spooky, see the documentary about Spooky. It's really good. No clip documentary. Check it out. But Spooky, you've been doing this thing for ages. What's like a really quick cut rundown of where you got started to where you are now?
Sure. So I started recording tournaments and events back in 2006. Actually, one of my inspirations was him right here. He was torrenting Third Strike tournaments and things like that. I started actually broadcasting around the second half of the Ustream/Justin TV era. I guess that's around 2009 when they really were starting to pick up. So from then till now, it's mostly been live broadcasts.
Nice, man. Max, what got you started in the FGC?
Pretty much arcades for the most part. Was sort of introduced to the fact that there is like a bigger community than just, you know, the few people that you play with back in the early 2000s. But I'd say big inclusion was like the start of, the end of Third Strike, start of Street Fighter 4, so around the mid-2000s.
Nice, man. And Gootecks, how about yourself, man? How did you get started?
I got started because I wanted to contribute to my local arcade at the time, Family Fun Arcade in Granada Hills, California. Yeah, that's okay. Max was there too.
more than I'd like to admit.
And at the time, the Third Strike community there was really focused on trying to take what they were seeing in Japan with their ranking battles and applying that to here in North America. So basically taking the output of a Third Strike machine and then adding commentary on it back in 2004, 5?
Something like that.
Something like that.
You had a couple of years on me at least.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Dr. Sub-Zero.
Yes, Dr. Sub-Zero was essentially, as far as I could tell, the first North American commentator. For fighting games.
From what it seems like, him and like Dogface for
Yeah,
the most part of the ones I remember.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, these guys had a karaoke mic setup, and that was how it was done at the time. I had a background in DIY audio engineering because I used to record shitty metal bands back in the day.
Hell yeah.
And so when I saw these guys and what they were doing with their karaoke machine, I was like, hey, like, how can I help? Can I just take all this off your hands? And that sort of grew from just doing the audio engineering to then helping to edit the videos and then putting those videos out essentially in a pre-YouTube era. We would have to use Google Video, and we never knew really, because before that we would just do local hosting.
I'm pretty sure they were AVIs.
Yeah,
too.
they were AVIs, and we didn't know, you know, we would go over the bandwidth limit. We had no idea who was listening or who was watching or anything.
And so,
That's
Max,
how I got started. Yeah.
you were saying similar thing with the arcades and stuff. You were trying to help out local arcades?
Yeah, I mean, as much as helping out, I think my helping out portion sort of really happened at the beginning of Street Fighter 4 when Super Arcade was one of the first locations in America to actually get a Street Fighter 4 piece of hardware. So I just commuted every single day I possibly could to go there, like 3-4 hours
From
every
the valley.
day, from the valley.
For real?
So for those that don't know,
It was far.
Yeah.
My wife definitely knows. But yeah, I was recording as many matches as I possibly could, throwing them up on my YouTube channel in 2007, and just, it was funny because I had known some people and faces, but I didn't know like what Alex Valle looked like. I didn't know what Gootecks looked like. I knew these people by characters.
Yeah.
So that was the cool part, is sort of being introduced to everyone. And through that first few weeks of Street Fighter IV, which was just like the most magical time of just discovery and a waiting list. Like people would have a
Not
document.
an exaggeration.
Not an exaggeration. A document of a line of names of who's going to play next on Street Fighter IV, and someone would take the managerial position just because
We
they
had to do
wanted.
the same thing at
Was it
Chinatown
Chinatown?
Fair
Oh
in
my-
New York, because we had, I think Henderson had 2 setups
Oh
or
my
something,
God.
and it was excessive.
So ours was like super gimped. It was on a CRT.
Oh,
so
nice.
it was the
High
zoomed
quality.
out Street Fighter
Yeah.
4. It was very magical, and that was probably my first the first videos I was thrown up on the channel in 2007, 2008 was pretty much because of that. I think earlier was Third Strike, CBS2, ye old stuff.
Nice. So Spooky, you were in New York back in the day when you got
Yes.
started.
So I guess this story is actually similar, a similar type of background. In New York, there was a popular arcade, Chinatown Fair. And I used to go there and play casually. I wasn't very good, but I met a lot of the people that were there. And when I saw the major influences both from the West Coast among these guys, Valle, what he was doing, Tekken Crash, a popular Korean broadcast, also very influential. I saw those things and I said, oh, these are cool. But I know some guys that are right here in New York that are also cool. What if I just do the exact same thing, right? And I mean, the background was already there, right? So X-copying it definitely worked very well.
Nice, man. And so, just because we're going through the history, Gootecks, what's one of the just coolest things you've done? Like when you were starting up back then, what was like one of those moments that was like that? This is what I'm doing all the time. This is me now. Like, I'm doing this thing. Kind of moments. Not to throw you on the spot too much, but
In terms of content or
either or, production or content.
God,
You don't have to know.
hold on, let me think about that for a second. Yeah.
I've tried you guys, Max.
I'd love to answer for Ryan because it was hugely influential on me. Was how the stuff you guys had going on at the Machinima Studios at the time, and the presentation of early cross-counter stuff was hugely influential on myself.
Thank you.
I would agree with that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's been so long, I
Yeah.
don't even remember a lot of the stuff. I mean, I remember, we were doing that. Okay, so thinking about the Machinima sort of breakthrough, I guess when I knew we were onto something was when Mike Ross and I were trying out we were auditioning for a reality show called WCG Ultimate Gamer Season 2.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Get in there.
and Mike was doing the audition and I was sitting out in the hallway, and this guy comes out of this office and he's like, oh, are you Gootecks? And I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, keep in mind, this was 2009, 10?
I think it was around Street Fighter 4 launch, yeah.
Yes, it was right before Super Street Fighter 4. He's like, hey, my name's Jose. I work at Machinima. I'm like, I don't know what that is. He's like, oh, we do YouTube. We do YouTube for gaming. And he knew who I was because he followed those videos, the Third Strike ranking battle videos, as well as the podcast that we were producing for Dr. Sub-Zero. And he was like, yeah, we got an early copy of Super Street Fighter 4, but we don't really know anything about fighting games. Do you want to play? Do you want to help us make some videos? And I was like, yeah, of course, yeah. And also, I got Mike Ross here,
Yeah.
doing this audition for this TV show. So we went into the office, played Super Street Fighter 4, and then kind of built the relationship with them over time through doing these videos for them. And then finally, even though that back in the day, Machinima was primarily like an FPS, Halo, Counter-Strike type of channel, they saw something in us, and then gave us what I would consider like our first real not even a big break, but we thought it was a big break at the time, which was to give us our own show, which we called Cross Counter, which for those that didn't know, those early episodes, even though they looked like they had high production value,
they definitely. Oh,
Yeah,
because
they did.
because we had a TV behind us that said Cross Counter. We were literally sitting on boxes of paper in the Machinima conference
Didn't matter.
room.
What's outside
Yeah.
of the frame doesn't matter.
Exactly. And that became, a weekly show that was originally designed as like a replay analysis show, and then finally they were like, hey, you should just make your own channel because we can help you monetize. Because back in the day, in this era, not just anybody could
was
make
tough.
money from YouTube videos. You had to go through a MCN multi-channel network such as Machinima, which was the only one for gaming at the time, and that was the only way you could make money with your videos. So we were essentially being paid by Machinima. I mean, it had to have been like $50 an episode each or something.
Dude, that sounds about right.
And
Like, yeah.
and then we were able to launch our own channel and monetize that way, which became the birth of Excellent Adventures.
Nice. So, to you, Spooky, like I suppose to refine it, like what's something that you feel like? 'Cause speaking of that, we're talking about the high production
Sure, of
value
course.
across cameras. Something that you feel you brought to the game that like changed something, did something different, something you're proud of that you brought to it.
So for me personally, I must say that I generally consider the edited style of what both Ryan and Max do to be actually, I don't think that I'm very good at doing that same type of thing. So what I'm most proud of is I love creating things that have an unedited style to them, but yet at the same time, when you watch something that's typically unedited, right? It's just like chaos and it's madness, and you can't really tell what's happening, right? But typically with my productions, even though they're in an unedited style, there's still a flow and a process. When you first turn into the Spooky stream, what to expect from the entire tournament, and at the end that you're gonna get set free, and that's the end, and that's like the way to let you out, right? So I would say when I felt the formula was really starting to be mastered was not the first year that we streamed Evo, but the second year that we streamed Evo, and that was, I want to say, 2011. And where I feel really there was a mastery there was that, for so long we were building things in a way where, a perfect example, Street Fighter was really popular at the start, Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 4, but anime games especially would be kind of ignored, and even Tekken, which now we know Tekken is huge, one of the games that's growing the best, right? Back then people would be like, turn that shit off. You better
Yeah, I
put Street
remember-
Fighter out right now.
I remember people feeling that way about T6 for a while.
Mhm. So, I went to Final Round, huge second tournament, and I was doing that, and people were just like, well, Spooky, why don't you just put out Street Fighter? Why are you watching this? And I was like, no, you guys don't even understand what you're watching right now. You guys need to sit here and watch this entire thing, and by the end of this tournament, you'll be enlightened. And
I
you know
think
what?
that's a good testament, because the sort of like the fighting game community was so Capcom rooted for many years, and now it's spread out, mostly because of what Vic is talking about, like spreading it to other games and getting more attention to smaller games, and now it's become what it is.
Yeah, so that was the background of that, was me, and I wasn't the only one pushing for this, but me and a lot of other guys, Melty Blood in the Bathroom, that's the perfect example of a meme that comes from what we tried to push of smaller games, right? Finally, Evo 2011 rolls around, and KOF gets 99,000, the peak viewership for King of Fighters, okay? And people were like, what? Even Wizard was behind me, and he was like, what? We have 100,000 for KOF? He couldn't believe it. So, seeing that was kind of the moment I felt where, there was something there, and it's just about continuing to improve.
Nice. Same to you, Max. Like you've been going through YouTube and stuff, or what do you feel is something that you've kind of brought to the game that you're most proud of?
I mean, near and dear to my heart was obviously the Assist Me series, because we wanted to branch out in high production value, funny comedy, like movie-like quality to like fighting game tutorials. But at the same time, it definitely didn't start that way. It took a long time to hone that process, to learn and understand what's a better way of describing this to people, what's a better way to keep people's attention, and to focus it around entertainment, to focus it around, we need to give people a reason to come back for the next one. So yeah, I'd say Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Assist Me was a big one. And the funniest thing is that happened right at a time in my career in 2011 where a lot of people were losing their jobs, and the game I was working for like 5 years, they just cut the entire American division. So I was going to be out of a job, and lucky enough, right at the time stars sort of collided, Capcom contacts me, we want to hire you for Ultimate Marvel 3, which is coming out like 6 months after the vanilla game. And I get contacted by a very special someone who worked at Capcom for a long time that was nervous about reaching out to the community to sort of like handle an official sort of thing, because they had not done a lot of that, and the very apt description was, "Don't F this up." And I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to do my best not to F this up. And luckily, Ultimate Marvel 3 came out pretty good, but Assist Me series and the sort of like evolving quality and like trying to just provide something different and unique definitely defines the beginning.
Nice. Would you say, because you, like I said, you've been doing YouTube since like 2007, would you say there was any unique challenges of like bringing fighting games to YouTube as opposed to something streamed?
I'd say, yeah, the thing with era 2011 YouTube, not as much 2007, that was just match videos. You know, 2007, there wasn't much commentary. It was like, you know, a small review here and there. Like, my commentary, which still exists, is awful. Like, it is just absolutely terrible. But the thing is, you just hone your craft and get better at it. But 2011 YouTube was really, the thing that influenced me the most was things like Freddie Wong, those short videos that existed for a long time. Mm-hmm. That was the thing that got me into special effects. I got to learn how to do these weird, you know, energy blasts and gunshots and all this stuff and throw it into skits and sort of combine what I thought was really cool about YouTube at the time, which was everyone can be a filmmaker, with the thing that I enjoyed the most, which was fighting games.
Nice, man. And Gootecks, you've been like building content networks and kind of sort of bringing the FGC to a wider esports community and a wider community in general. What was kind of the start of that, and were there any challenges in kind of bringing fighting games out that way?
I think the start of it was probably around 2008 with the release of the arcade release of Street Fighter 4. Mike and I, you know, always saw eye to eye on this sort of one concept that in order for fighting games to grow and for there to be more people and money and sponsors and whatever, there have to be more people that, you know, kind of know how to play. Not know how to play from a, you know, they don't have to be the best. They just have to be, you know, kind of borderline competent. Mm-hmm. And so in order to reach more people, we felt that we had to take the educational route at the beginning. And I still feel like that's important, because all of the type of stuff that we were doing at the beginning in terms of the basic tutorials, that stuff essentially should live, you know, throughout the life of the game. And that stuff is not, it doesn't expire. It doesn't have to, you know, there's not really any reason that stuff shouldn't exist. But that is what helps us from the get-go to grow the audience. And now, I mean, I guess when you talk about expanding into esports, I mean, I guess it's working, right? Because all of us collectively that have been making content over the years, you know, like Max says, you know, we hone our craft and it gets a little bit better and a little bit better, which means it reaches a little bit more people, because it gets easier to share. The content gets better, and then it you know, now I guess has sort of reached a level where I would consider what happens with Evo, you know, thanks to guys like Spooky and Chris Seg, I would consider that to be on par, if not better, than any like esports production that I've seen. I mean, it's not, you know, for those that haven't been in the Mandalay Bay Events Center during the Evo Grand Finals a couple years ago, when they used like the I don't know, the center or the triangle stage or whatever, whatever it is. I mean, that's as good or better than anything else I've seen in esports, for sure.
And the thing that I agree with on Ryan is the fact that even though it's as esports evolution, as we talked about that for so many years, about making fighting games esports and, you know, evolving it, there was a conversation with, I think, the dude that was taking up our luggage, asking about the Evo event. He's like, it's fighting games, right? Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter? We're like, yeah. And he's like, so who's playing? Like, how many seasons did they have to go through? We're like, no, like, people just can join. He's like, what?
Yep.
That doesn't make sense to people, because
I had that same conversation earlier.
That ties back to the arcade roots. You want to join in the tournament? Entry
Yes.
fee. Let's go.
Yes.
And you still have to fight your way through the gauntlet. Like,
Yep.
and you could get bodied by some random dude that just has your number on that day. And I think that's the most important thing of Evo, that it still keeps it grassroots.
I completely agree. We're XSplit. We're running the Dragon Ball stage at the moment, and literally just as I was leaving for here, there was a kid who was like 8. Who some of you guys saw this? Bodied that dude. Like, it was crazy. I got over there and like Offcast was doing the production, and he was just like, "Dude, he's killing him. This is crazy." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I love that about Evo and this whole production. It's really an amazing community. But like, so Spooky, taking it to you, like, what would you say was one of the kind of biggest challenges you had kind of bringing up
All right.
your streams and stuff?
Cool. This is actually a very good question, and it's when I started, right? I found that my strength was really in the technical aspect. And one of the things that I'm known for is that back then I was actually running a one-man broadcast. Okay, you would go watch other guys, and there were 5 guys. Now I don't want to, make them feel bad, but it was chaos. They didn't know what the hell was going on. And meanwhile, there's Spooky way in the corner doing the main stage by himself. Everything's good. Everything's going great.
With 6 arms.
Basically,
I've watched him do it. He's done this on shows up and on. It's crazy.
So the technical aspect of it, realistically, I haven't mastered, right? But the reality is that I really need everyone. I need the personalities, I need the people, I need the players, I need everyone else, because otherwise, all the technical stuff that I know is really kind of useless. So what it comes down to is that the best shows really have the perfect combination. They have me and a good team working the boards, but then there's also a great personality of players, the guys that are competing that are very strong and trying their best, and they're sponsored by their teammates, and they're trying to do their thing. And then we also have the commentary guys, and they're speaking so well dressed, and they're really getting the crowd excited and everything like that. You need that perfect storm of things to come together for it to work. And without all the pieces, what I do is basically useless.
I mean, just because we're running this one Dragon Ball stage, we had like a little technical difficulty this morning. Took like 20 minutes to get stuff going. The commentary team, honestly, FGC commentators, the best I've ever seen. And I've done stuff across all sorts of eSports and video games and stuff. These guys kept it running for 20 minutes on just like, can you just keep going? That was it. And they kept it going, and they kept it fresh. They made jokes. I had a good time. So yeah, amazing stuff.
I think that's one of the things that separates our scene from a lot of the other, probably everybody else, which is that most of the people that have been doing this for so long under so many different conditions, for no money, for tons of headaches, and it's kind of like you only get that sort of level of experience through trial and error and just going through it over and over. And I just think that because of our history and the track record, we are able to pull off stuff that that just doesn't exist in other worlds, because they just don't have our level of experience.
It's true. And most of the fighting game guys I find, especially with productions, they have more of a realist attitude than I found with the bigger, especially the bigger budget stuff. I've seen guys just blow through investment funds, and bam, our company died in a year, right? But when I watch the growth of the stream teams and the larger streamers and whatnot, okay, nobody's really breaking the bank. Like Max, he's got me beat by about a factor of 5, which is quite strong. But other than outside of that, right, nobody's really killing it, right? But you can see that everyone's growing little by little, and you see guys upgrading all their equipment, and guys are little by little, I quit my job, I'm making enough money on my stream now that I'm okay, right? And I feel like that type of progress not only is safer, but it's more realistic. Like, what investor is going to give you $2 million, look at what you're doing, and be like, well, this made sense, right? But then when you come to the investor the right way and you propose everything, Tepin, for example, I love those guys. I'm sponsored by them. Thank you for the sponsorship, Tepin. I love them. But you know what? Perfect example, okay? They came to me and they had an idea, and I came to them with the idea, and you know what? It makes total sense. They're making a card game based on fighting game characters, and they want me to talk about it on my stream. That's the type of realist attitude that I enjoy, and I really hate when I hate overproduction. I can't stand that. I hate overinvestment and guys just trying to get too much. I hate when I look at someone's sponsorship deck and I can tell that's really a generic sponsorship deck, and I didn't even try to cater it to the person they're sending the deck to. I don't even have that. There's no such thing as a deck at Team Spooky. Literally, when you contact me and you say you want to work together, I create something custom for you on the spot.
There used to be no cross-counter sponsorship deck up until this year Evo season, and I'm right there with you. It is so irritating or infuriating or whatever to see the sheer amount of money that gets wasted in esports, because we know for a fact that there is no way to build an audience from scratch, from nothing, when you're doing super high budget production.
You
Because
can have all that money and it's meaningless. There's
Yeah,
no
it
personality
means
there. Nobody
nothing.
cares about who's on it.
And it's not just that, but like these people that even have that money, these entities that have so much money to invest in esports, you better believe that those are the first people to cut the funding when the viewership doesn't match what they've invested.
They're going to get burned, and when they
Yeah.
get burned, they're going to be so cautious about everything else that's happening, and we're seeing
Right.
that happen now. People are starting to back out
Yep.
a little bit.
And that is our opportunity. That's why I always talk about the esports bubble, because I'm like, can I get my organization into position to take advantage of it? Because there's going to be a lot of smart, hardworking, talented people that are out of jobs, and that is our opportunity to pick these people up.
I agree. I think we're in a place right now where if a bubble of esports were to burst and the larger games were to all kind of collapse all at the same time, we would be in a position where we could basically continue to do what we were doing as if
Right.
nothing had ever happened.
Because this is not a line item on a marketing budget. This was homegrown over the past, whatever, I don't know, 30 years.
And that
Since
term is
91.
important, homegrown, and it's the thing that you guys try to explain to these people about esports, of trying to make their thing esports. Whenever a dev comes up to you about a game that's coming out or something that hasn't been established, it's that the games that have this clout, this backing, this fandom that allows the esports to happen didn't do it because the game was designed for esports. It grew its fandom because the game was good and created enough goodwill, word of mouth between its audience that people cared when they heard about it. So it happened organically. And now you get a lot of stuff that just pops in and they're like, we want to go straight for the esports audience, and they don't even have a game that exists yet. So
Good luck.
good luck. That's pretty much what it boils down to.
Most of the games that ended up being esports games either have a history or did not start as esports.
Yep.
League wasn't an esport until like 2 years in or something, or 3 years in. CSGO obviously has the original Counter-Strike to come behind them. A lot of the other shooters also are
And
shooters that go on
Counter-Strike
for years and years.
was a mod, a community-based Half-Life mod.
Good point, very good
And some of the biggest games at EVO, some of the biggest like Capcom run games at EVO for the longest time are horribly imbalanced, like imperfect messes that are cherished by the community even to this day. So not exactly great for esports, but good for us.
Yeah. And like kind of on that note, Max, like where do you feel like, because we're talking streaming, but we're also talking just video production, the FGC in general, where do you feel this whole thing's going? Like, because this is pretty big at the moment, like coming to EVO, seeing how big this all is, but where do you feel, like, even just from a production standpoint, like what do you feel is the stuff that's going to come up or that you want to bring to the game in the future? Not to put any spoilers out there, but you know.
Yeah, it's hard to say because it just keeps getting like bigger every year. Not talking about like what I'm doing, just in general, like the fighting game interest every single year. There was more fighting games released over the span of 2018 and 2017 than I could even count, like just competing with each other at the throat to get the attention of everybody. And shockingly, a lot of them still do pretty good, enough to make more, which is wonderful. It's great to be in what feels like a fighting game renaissance right now. But at the same time, it requires creators, much less marketing and developers, to innovate, to try to we got to make our thing a bit different from everybody else. We got to try to stand out because now there's a whole bunch more. It feels like we're in the Super Nintendo era again of but the thing is, they're actually good. Like the difference between now and the 90s is that the majority of these games that come out are actually pretty damn good. So it makes it tough for an all-encompasser like myself, which I try to at least get everything a fair college try. When I was much younger, it was just Capcom stuff. But I enjoy that. So that's the thing I've been trying to do myself over the past few years, was to try everything. And it's no guarantee that everything's going to get the same attention because, of course, I'm biased. I like certain things. But will something captivate me to the point of which, this is amazing. Like, the stuff that's going on in this game is ridiculous. Like, this is super fun. I think it's important to share that with as many people as possible because that's what makes fighting games truly unique, is how unique they are versus each other.
I agree. I want to get to some questions. If you guys have any questions in a minute, feel free to line up by the mic if you got any. We're going to do that in a moment. But same question to you, Spooky. Like, how do you see the future going, like in the fighting game community, just in streaming, but in general?
Future of the fighting game community, I've thought about this. These are more like ideas, I guess. Like I've tried to guesstimate what's going to happen 10 years or 15 years down the line. I think that it's funny because someone said something about Evo not being a league or anything like that. I think that 10 years from now, there might be a chance that Evo actually is a league and not a league that you have to like do something special to be a part of. You could go to any part of the league and just enter whenever you feel like it, right? But I mean, if there's already an Evo here and an Evo Japan, how long until there's like an Evo South America, an Evo Canada, and an Evo everywhere, right? So I feel like that will also stimulate kind of fighting games among those places too. So like Pakistan, perfect example. They're really starting to come under their own right now because of Arslan Ash, amazing Tekken player who competed at Evo Japan. Look at that, right? So perfect example, right? From my standpoint, I kind of see that coming and I want it to happen. I think it's great. When that does finally happen, I want to create something a little different for myself. So I think I want to create a fighting game, not really a TV show, I want to create a fighting game actual show. And I guess Assist Me is like the perfect kind of precursor or example of it, or some of what Gootecks was doing. But that's kind of, as I mentioned earlier, like a weakness for me is I'm not really big on edited style of content.
Yes.
So I think that for me trying this type of thing once will be nice.
Nice. And Gootecks yourself?
Thinking about the future of fighting games, not so much content or streaming, I think it's only a matter of time before there is a really large disruptor in the space. So right now, you have Capcom, Bandai Namco, ArcSys, but if the big three and now four, I would say, start to see what's going on here, who had Blizzard, Riot, Valve, and now Epic.
Tom Cannon confirmed that Riot Games is working on a fighting game, by the way.
Oh, like officially?
That's officially confirmed as of today.
The best kept secret.
Everybody
Okay.
kind of already knew, but it's
Right,
confirmed.
okay.
He officially has said that is
But
real.
it's
and it's
now,
happening.
it's now actually
Yes.
real.
Okay, so
To your
Crossover
point,
to
you
my
were
point.
correct.
To my
that's
point.
where it's going.
And so, I mean, I've been saying this for quite some time, that one of these three will come in and make a free-to-play PC-based fighting game that you could probably play on different devices, of which, the Cannon brothers had already developed with Rising Thunder before Radiant was acquired by Riot, right? So that was already a thing. But now, I guess if it's official, now they're about to dip their toes in, because the reality is that the Bandai Namcos and Capcoms of the world their roots are in arcade games, right? But it's a much different beast to be able to create a one-on-one PC game that's with the free-to-play business model and with great netcode. And I think that the Cannon brothers have essentially solved that, right?
What if
With
it's team-based somehow?
and I was getting getting to yes, team-based also could be a thing, because that's one of the things that keeps our scene small, that really helps other games. So when you remove the barriers to entry, right? Number one, it's free. Number two, it can be played on PC or console or whatever with crossplay. It doesn't matter. That's not a technical hurdle. We know that. That's a big corporation ego hurdle, not a technical one. And then if you add another entity in the mix, like Epic Games, because if you go to the Unreal Engine site, if you've been there recently, you can see that it's Mortal Kombat 11 and Street Fighter are the two top games, which once I saw that, I was like, are they hinting at something? And I think all of the existing companies, it's going to be really, really, really scary when not just Riot, but what Blizzard's going to be like, oh, well, I guess we got to make a fighting game
I guess
too.
we'll just sit down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you guys go ahead. So I think that these companies are going to come in, disrupt the space in a very scary way and a very positive way, depending on which side you're on.
Nice. Thank you so much, guys. I'll turn it over to questions. You'd like to introduce yourself and your question there?
Hello, my name is Julian Meyerstrom from St. Louis. I started playing fighting games with Injustice 2, so I'm very, very new, and you guys have been talking about how you were playing for so long. If I'm starting to make video content or I'm starting to stream, like, at what point I can go, okay, I'm actually good enough to where I can talk to other people and I can talk to the chat about what's going on, or like how long should I have been playing for, or like what rank should I be getting? Like how good do I have to be in order to actually be listened to in those spaces?
Spooky, I'll put that
So I mean, that one's a tough one. With streaming and with, especially if you're trying to make a name for yourself as a broadcaster or a streamer, obviously you really want to be able to be strong at the game you're playing, right? Because people can kind of tell if you suck, right? But at the same time, you don't have to present yourself in a way where you're the best at the game. You can present yourself as a way like, hey, I'm an Injustice 2 boy, I'm new to this, you know what I mean? I'm trying to get a little bit better, and you can really push yourself that angle. And honestly, I think that's also interesting. And, you know, especially if you get some of your friends involved, you meet some other homies that love NRS games like you do, you know, and bring them onto your stream as well, you know, that can help. Guests are also a good example. Let's say you're not confident in your own ability, right? But you know another NRS homie that you know is really good, that's just in your hood or goes to your local or whatever, we'd be like, hey, would you like to be on my broadcast for an event? And maybe we'll play together, or maybe we'll play some net play. This is probably the best way for you to build what you're trying to do, I think.
And I'd also throw in that even for me personally, with the viewership and followership I have now, I have never been like the expert, the absolute best at anything that I've ever streamed. So I can say for you personally, if you love what you're streaming and you love what you're doing, find ways to explain that to people. Find ways to explain like why you love these interactions or love these characters or love the game you're playing, because you'll naturally start growing your audience with people that like the same thing. They're going to jump in and be like, I remember this game, and then if you're going to be able to echo that with them about what they love about it, you already have a friendship conversation happening there. And the idea is to make your chat like your friend about what you love is the same thing they love. So that's my best piece of advice, is to share why you love it so much with the people that are watching.
Yeah, I guess to build on top of that, when I was starting, like when I was just doing these FFA ranking battle videos, I was also producing a podcast and then started my own, which was called the Street Fighter Podcast in 2009. The concept of this podcast was not to talk about how much I knew about Street Fighter. It was to interview other top third strike players in the area to ask them about how they thought about the game. So in the early days, it was never, and even now, like it was never intended to be about me. It was more about, because I knew that I was pretty good, but these guys were way better. So I never wanted to front and be like, oh yeah, I'm the best. The other thing to consider is that it doesn't matter how good you are right now, because when it comes to content, there is no shortcut. So in the same way that whatever level you are right now in the game, you're probably around that level or below in content. So you would not expect that, 6 months from now, you're going to be able to be the best Injustice player on the planet. So you need to give yourself that same amount of time with content, that same amount of consistency and discipline that you would apply to improving in the game should also be applied to content.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Hi, my name is Zeke. I'm from here in Vegas, actually, and I've been playing fighting games since like the early 90s kind of thing. So I'm an old bastard that's been around the scene and seen my fair share of games come and go. But one thing I've noticed is for every kind of game that makes it in there and is well received and has a long legacy, there's a lot of other really good games that they just don't make that longevity. And especially now that we're in this renaissance and there's so many of them, do you guys see any way that a game can rise above? Like, is it something that the community should try to help its individual game, or is it just let Darwinism take over, so to speak?
So my thing about games of that style, and keep in mind that I'm the type of guy that likes everything generally, even games that other people don't like that much, I tend to love, is that, not every game can be a big game, you know what I mean? There's always factors to this, and there's tiers, just like there's tiers of anything else. That being said, I think the best thing to do with individual games, right, is when you know that there's worth in an individual game, one thing that guys like to do is they kind of, it's not that they ignore what the rest of the community is doing, but they do the same type of thing that we've talked about, but just for that game. So Under Night is a perfect example of it. Originally started from Melty Blood, right? And nobody knew what the heck Melty Blood was until that year where we got into Evo or whatever, right? But that was a perfect example. And even nowadays, okay, yeah, you don't really find Melty Blood on streams that often or anything like that, but if you ask any random guy what is Melty Blood, they generally kind of know what it is, right? So I think it's the same thing with most of those old games. It's not that they're ever really dead or anything like that. It's more a matter of, someone has to be the one that wants to create the perfect environment for that game to prosper once again.
Yeah, and I do say it takes like certain community heads at times, or a gathering of enough people with enough voices to sort of like echo that why this game is great. And I think Unionist growing in popularity is a wonderful example of that. And I also think Tekken is a wonderful example of that, because these games are fundamentally like great fighting games, like at their core. Probably some of the best versions, like building up of so many versions before, and now the developers have gotten better at it, and the fans are willing to support that. And that echoes, it once again comes back to good word of mouth is usually more valuable than a marketing plan.
I think for me, it just comes down to content. If you're trying to make your particular game big or grow your scene, do you have the type of content in place that makes it so that other people can get into it easily, as well as the people who are already involved feel proud to be a part of that community? So that means not just streaming, but like tutorial videos, interviews, written content, the whole podcast.
Not a lot of guys do online tournaments anymore, things like that. And a lot of these games actually have good online. People just don't bother trying to make an online tournament out of it.
Online tournaments theoretically are way low. I mean, there's no risk.
The
right?
lowest hanging fruit that no one does is
Yep.
online tournaments.
Yep. But it's not glamorous, it's not flashy, so people don't want to do the work.
True. Thank you very much, man.
Right on. Thank you, guys.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name's Rashawn. I also go by Mufasa, and I'm a tournament organizer actually in Toronto, Canada. And I formed up a new team recently called Incendium back in January this year. So I organize 2 bi-weeklies. They alternate within the week from Wednesday and Friday, Hyper Fight Night and Shockwave. And I've been trying to figure out ways on trying to grow our viewership through Twitch and also on YouTube as well too. Something that I've been doing recently with my team is for all of our archives that we do, because we usually do about top 4 to top 3 usually. I highlight the top 3 or the top 4 players that are in that archive for each of our games that we do for our weeklies. And we also post them on Twitter too, and we at those people on Twitter as well, the top 6 players that were from that tournament. So we're just trying to figure out what we can do to expand the growth with our content. People have recognized us. We've had some events. We did a big Tekken event, Electric Clash, back in I believe it was in April earlier this year too, and it was a really big turnout. We got featured on the score eSports, but we're trying to figure out what ways, because our viewership is still kind of it's not as high as we'd like to have it be, and we're trying to figure out ways to grow that for the Canadian scene.
Sure. So the thing about growing a broadcast, right, is that you have to, especially when you're starting out, you have a strong base apparently of events already, right? You got events going on, you got people coming to your events, you got guys playing, you got different games going on at the events. So you have kind of the core there of what you want to broadcast, right? But your problem is that you're trying to reach out to people and no one's really checking out what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So what you have to understand is that Twitter is not just a place where you throw a tweet out there and then bam, you're done. You know what I mean? Some guys, what they do, okay, there's no BS. They throw the same tweet out there 10 different times, and then the one that actually gets likes, that's the ones that they let sit there. The same thing with other socials. That's one thing you got to keep in mind. Another thing is that you got to really make sure that your local guys are really talking about where they're going all the time, especially your top guys. They got to be tweeting and saying, hey, this week I'm going to the bi-weekly. Who else is coming? You know what I mean? Hey, come watch the stream. I'm in top 4 right now. What's good? Come watch me. You know what I mean? You need to foster that type of thing so that your base of guys that already know you are starting to get the word out there. That will help a lot as well. I guess those are the ones I have for you for now.
I would say from personal experience as well, when you guys are talking about growth and
Yes.
trying to make things bigger, if not get more people in, what you're already doing is communicating what's happening at whatever event you're doing and trying to get that out to as many people as possible. And what I do see a lot when people come up to me and they're like, I want to become a better streamer, I want to get my audience, I want to do kind of similar things. they immediately go towards the high quality route, where I got to provide the best looking, I got to provide the best audio, and that, in my opinion, it is not exactly required yet. If you're able to just grow a friendship with people around you, that's your basis. If that grows, then you can start going to that route, because a lot of people invest so much before they've really done anything that it becomes a sinkhole that suddenly there's no money left and they can't keep going.
My first
So-
2 years of streams were my personal computer from home and 2 web cameras that I bought online for $20 each.
Yeah, just if you're able to provide something that is fun and engaging to your audience, just keep doing that to the best of your ability, but don't try to just suddenly go and, whoa, it's because we don't have a 1080p 4K stream. That's not the reason. That's definitely not the reason.
Well, I was gonna say, so for that, like, in terms of like the equipment and the quality of how our stream looks like, we're not concerned about that at all. In fact, we think it looks really good as it is. It's just, again, more so just trying to figure out ways that we can reach out to a broader audience, really, and that's really, and we're very consistent too with like how often, like, I have like archives up like the day right after each of our locals that we do.
And that consistency is probably why you guys have like the established audience that you do have.
Yes.
The tough thing is breaking that, and I can't help but say that there's a little bit of luck involved. You kind of have to be in the right place at the right time for someone to be looking just for that, and suddenly they click in and, hey, these guys are doing something.
For sure.
So I would say if there already is an audience out there that's looking for something similar that you guys are doing, and you're hitting that same exact time frame, it might be a good idea to try to move it to another time slot or something like that, just because how good is the chance that people are going to come to yours if somebody else is already doing something similar around the time frame?
Yeah, I mean, time slots are definitely a thing. I'm going to suggest 2 things. One is tactical and the other is philosophical. I think part of the reason why people struggle as local communities with their streams, as well as especially individual streamers that are just at home by themselves, is that there is not a lot of value with the content. What is the value of watching people playing fighting games in Toronto? What is the value for me, the viewer, right? Like, I'm Gootecks, right? Of course. Why do I want to watch some people from Toronto that I don't know who they are? And that's not a diss to Toronto. I'm just saying from like somebody who's been in this forever. Why do I care? I don't, right? So this is something that I think most local scenes struggle, and this is why they're not bigger, because it's not as simple as copying Spooky or Max's hardware configuration and then putting the games on stream.
Yeah.
So my approach would be to say, okay, how do I get people to care? And I think, based on my experience in this scene, that most people who are strong players in this scene are, they're like personalities. They have really interesting origin stories. They have some sort of polarizing thing about them. And that's why for us with Cross Counter, we always try to focus on the entertainment aspect, the personality aspect of it. Because the reality is, the uncomfortable truth is that to the untrained eye, nobody can tell the difference between a player who's in the 90th percentile and the 99th percentile. All they can see on screen to the untrained eye is, oh, that guy is cool, or oh, I hate that guy. Oh, that guy is such, whatever. So my approach would be to, how do you take these players that you have in your local scene and build them up in a way that makes people care? The other thing that I was going to mention is tactical. There are strategies like using Gleam.io to run like social campaigns to literally generate followers on Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, whatever. I mean, these are quantifiable ways that you can grow your audience, because people like to think that there's some sort of magic bullet. There's not. Everybody needs to remember that this is just impressions, clicks, and conversions. So when you think of it as just one big marketing experiment, you can take the emotion out of it and realize that if your followers are growing little by little because you're doing stuff that people care about and you're using these other strategies to increase your followers organically, not by whatever, Instagram bots, but if you're doing that
Yeah.
organically, it grows steadily over time. All you have to do is stay consistent.
That's it.
I will say that he said something very important there, which is that taking emotion out of it, when, especially when being analytical, looking at stats and things like that, taking emotion out of it is very important. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, clicks and conversions are the foundation of internet advertising. I'm not making this up. This is just what Facebook and Google are built on. So how do you apply that mindset to what we're doing? Because that's all it is. It's just marketing and customer acquisition. That's it.
Nice. Thank you, man. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
We got time probably about 2 more questions. And I know Spooky, you got to dash out.
Yeah,
of here,
I gotta
like-
head back to the main
Yeah,
forum.
are either you guys around afterwards, or you got to get back?
We're good. I'm
Nice.
good.
So a few of these guys will be around afterwards. But your question, sir.
Right. Hi, my name is Nathan Lemuel. I'm from Colorado Springs, Colorado. My love for comic books was mainly what got me into fighting games, and watching videos like XSplit Adventures and a lot of your videos, Maximilian's, back in 2014 is what basically got me back into it. I kind of had a bit of a comment on the whole eSports bubble that you were commenting back earlier, and I've also totally seen. I could totally see exactly what you were talking about. I've also watched this guy named Devin Nash who isn't even all that into the FGC, but he is a big analyst on esports, and he also sees the bubble and how these big companies have been spending millions of dollars upon arenas made solely just for that one esport, yet there's no return of investment on there's no signs that they will have a return of investment on all the money that they've been spending. And he also does agree on how the FGC has been playing it smart. And make sure I don't hit this thing. And I think one of the things about the FGC that I do agree that what makes it work is how diverse it really is, and it kind of this ties into my question of. I just ran a tournament at a convention back in April, and I met a lot of different players who were interested in a whole bunch of different fighting games, and I could see the potential for the scene to be pretty big and passionate. I'm just wondering how we can compromise our potential viewer base with the amount of content that we have, while trying not to alienate the core audience that we already have, because we already have a dedicated group that plays like Tekken and Eunice, but then we also have this other group that's like very much into Street Fighter or Smash, and we're trying to make sure it's like a big juggling act that we don't really know how to balance them. I'm trying to figure out what exactly can we do to try to maximize the amount of viewers that we have while not trying to deviate from our course that's already gotten us to the point that we're at right now.
Yeah, so we have kind of a problem like this at next level. Battle Circuit right now has like 5 games or something crazy. Sometimes a couple of them don't get streamed. I think that there's really 2 routes you can go. One route is you can say, you know what, screw it, we're going to support everything, and you can just keep doing exactly how you're doing. And yeah, it's going to be a little crazy, but it's still going to grow over time. And it sounds like although you have a lot of communities and you're having a little bit of a trouble juggling them, it's also kind of a good problem in that all your communities seem to respect you enough that they want you to juggle them in the first place. That's pretty good, probably a good sign. I would say if it's really that tough that you find making it work the way you want it to work is difficult right now, you might want to consider something like find the communities that all like to play the same games together and breaking it down that way. So like Team Stickbug is a perfect example at next level. All the Team Stickbug guys mostly play anime games, right? So that's like the perfect tournament for them because they come to the other tournaments too, right? But that's the one where they all like to gather. And then Battle Circuit, it's mostly like Street Fighter, NRS guys, some Dragon Ball guys come and things like that. But that's the day that they choose to gather. So Tekken guys like Sundays for whatever reason, so we pick Sundays, and that's the day that we choose to gather them. So, you know, sometimes it's easiest to just give everybody what they want.
And it's also about, like, yeah, not spreading yourself too thin. Like, if you don't have the people to run brackets and stuff like that, then that's probably not the best idea. And if it's already a challenge to run, like, 2 tournaments and you want to expand that to 4, much less even more, to sort of accommodate this incoming demand, like, hey, we want to see this game, we want to see that game. I can tell you, if you don't already have the experience and you're not already like a professional and making sure everyone knows where to do, where to go, what to do, and when to report, it's just going to lead to end up being a nightmare. So make sure you have the appropriate amount of people that are helping you out, you know, especially when it comes down to like these like convention events and stuff.
Sometimes when someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, would you like some help?" you should say yes. It's hard to say yes sometimes, I know, but
Yeah, I had to do that once or twice, and it's given me quite big breaks, especially when we had to do things at the last minute. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much, man. This will probably be the last question, if you want to comment.
Hi, my name is David. I'm from Ohio. My question's really about content creation. So, like Max, you have your Boss Rage, there's Cross Counter, and then there's always Team Spooky. If you guys were to click on YouTube and see something that like somebody else has a video called Boss Rage, it follows a similar style, but it's definitely like not yours. I always wondered, would you feel like honored that this is something that you started, or would you feel like, hey, this person's like copying what we've done? I'm not really a big fan of that.
I think people are allowed to do what they do. When it comes down to like direct emulation in some ways, depending on how far it goes, it's a certain thing. And I'm talking from experience because we made a quote unquote epic rap battle in 2011 that got us into some pretty big legal trouble because of how quality similar it was to the existing epic rap battles. And that was a young YouTube when parody didn't really have direct rules, so they came after us pretty hard. But that was the thing, it was literally parody. If someone was to make a parody of Boss Rage, I'd retweet it. Like, I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, I do come across other channels that would just call whatever they're doing, you know, the same title as what I'm doing, but they're not hitting the beats that I aim for in those videos, which, for example, Boss Rage is about storytelling. It's about hitting these emotional highs and these super emotional lows about fighting the hardest possible thing you can in a fighting game. So the funny thing is, a lot of those times I come across those other videos, some guys just slap epic music on it and edit together some stuff that happens during their playthrough, and that's it. But it doesn't have the emotional storytelling, and that's the unique thing that I'll try to always carry over when I have my own personal video style, is that I'm thinking about why I'm using the music, why I'm cutting the way I do, why I'm going to put this here, put this there, or why I'm going to go back and re-record things from the live segment to make them more emotionally impactful during certain moments. So is it a problem that other people are sort of copying what you're doing? I mean, I think all the more power to them, because people, nothing anybody does is completely original. It isn't. Like, I got all my inspiration, honestly, from these guys, as well as like Angry Video Game Nerd to begin something like Assist Me. So I think more power to them, because you hope that they eventually grow to find their own sort of thing that makes what they do.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. I was just say, I mean, imitation is like flattering. You know what I mean? Sometimes guys just imitate you. It's okay. I'll just say that if it goes beyond imitation and it's to the point where clearly it's kind of an X copy of your content, please consider using the YouTube tools. Guys take my stuff all the time, and you know what? I got to go on YouTube all day long and be like, no, that was mine, that was mine, that was mine, that was mine. And if you're not diligent about it, you know, it's basically theft.
I think of it the same way. I think of it like music. I read somewhere a long time ago that if you want to, let's say, emulate your favorite musician or artist, you don't listen to their records, you listen to the records that inspired them. And so I think about my inspirations, right? My inspirations, like for all of what we do, like let's say, it's like you have to look at those inspirations of who you're trying to emulate, because otherwise you just come off as a cheap copy. So when I look at people, and I get it, you know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery for sure, but I look at people that try to emulate others' content a little too much, and I'm like, well, these guys are doomed, because they may not understand they may not understand the spirit, like what Max is saying, and the story and those types of elements, but they may not understand the workflow and how much time really went into it. Like, people would tell me, like, oh yeah, like, you know, me and my homie started this series and it's supposed to be like our version of Excellent Adventures. I'm like, cool, I hope you have fun with this, because I don't really think it's gonna grow to the same level.
when people do stuff like this, I use it as feedback. I watch people that try to do the same thing as me, but kind of feel horribly at it, and I'm like, okay, now I know all the things to make sure to not do on my next broadcast. So you can also use it to help you out.
Unintentionally helpful.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. We're gonna have to wrap things up, but if you guys could leave, if you have one bit of advice, someone looking to do fighting game content, or just looking to do content in general, if you could give people in the audience or anyone just one piece of advice, what would that be? Some you, Max.
And I think I developed this for a while because it took a while for me to internally realize what I was doing when I started Assist Me or just started making recordings of YouTube videos or Online Warrior or whatever, Boss Rage even. I heavily encourage for anyone that wants to get into content creation, or you already are and you're having trouble finding yourself instead of emulating and it's not working, try to make the things you would want to see. Go out there and think in your head, what would I want to watch right now that is difficult to come across? And hopefully it's not exactly like what somebody else is doing. And if it is like somebody else is doing, try to take that formula and expand upon it. How would you make it even better? Because that was the thing that started me with Assist Me, was that, man, I would love to see a fighting game movie of some kind that would also teach people how to
Assist Me's
play.
pretty dope, I'm not gonna
So that was, and then Boss Rage was the same thing. I wanted it to be like this game, the movie, and that's where the editing style sort of evolved with that. And to a much lesser degree, I loved the videos that I would come across on YouTube that was just like, hey, I'm gonna take every single super that's in Samurai Showdown 2 and throw it into a YouTube video. And I'm like, I would love to do something like that, but rate the super. And now it's one of my biggest video series. It's the easiest thing I could possibly do, but I just make dumb scores on every super I see in a fighting game, and people love it. So once again, try to make the things that you would like to see.
100%. Me and Mike would always have this saying, we have to make ourselves laugh first. What do we find entertaining? Because if we don't think this stuff is funny, how would anybody else?
Yeah.
So they gave really good, advice for how to create content. So I guess I'll give technical advice and just say that one thing that's really important is being diligent about what you're spending and why you're spending it. We said this earlier, but not going out of your way to buy expensive stuff that you don't need yet, but also, returning things that you bought that didn't actually work. I find a lot of people don't do this, or they don't get their money back for things that break, which is like, dog, you lose a lot of money really fast.
Or if you can use it for one event, use it for that one event and then take it back.
Take it back or something. So please,
Be smart.
Please be diligent with just, even if it seems silly at that time, the money adds up so quickly, very quickly.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think for content creators, understand that consistency and sustainability are far more important than knowing what to do or being good or whatever. Oftentimes I see people try to get started in unsustainable ways, whether it's over-investing too much on hardware that doesn't matter when you have no audience, or spending too much time on the editing process when you don't really have an audience. I think it's far more sustainable to try to figure out how to make content creation a habit that you do every day, in the same way that if you're a serious fighting game player who's competing and trying to improve, you're in training mode every day, or you're playing, sets with people every day. But the problem is that when people get started, they think they're going to be the next Max or Spooky or whatever, and they have no audience, and they think, okay, well, I want to put my best foot forward. I want to make the perfect video. Well, the reality is that there is no such thing, number one, and even if you did make that perfect video, nobody's gonna see it at the beginning. So that's why when we're talking about, local scenes, I'm saying, why do I care? And so I guess I just feel like you will find your voice over time. I don't know, there's another saying, you have your, I guess an approach to music writing, which is just you have to get all these garbage songs out of your head out first. You guys already know how we started. Max didn't just wake up one day and he's, Maximilian dude, right? He worked at it until his audience grew, because as he got better, the audience expanded. and it was a period of since 2007.
Yeah,
It's
it
crazy.
was 4.5, 5 years before I made any money on anything.
Yeah.
And it was a big time sink and money sink too.
Yeah, so it's like when you have like 10 people watching your videos and you spend 8 hours on it, like that's just not sustainable for people over a 4.5 year period.
And it is a natural thing to go out and see like what other people are doing, and you're going to be like, oh, I could do that. I can do that, and I can pull the same thing. Like people would just watch me instead. The thing, and I remember
So
I did this
misguided.
myself. The reason why my thought process, much less a lot of people's, is incorrect in that situation is that you're not seeing how many years of what they did that led up to that, of
Exactly.
why they got to the point where people are actually watching.
Yes.
You didn't see all the stuff that they did before, you just see what they did.
Yes. People who are good at something, anything, make it look easy. And so thinking about making it a tiny little habit. Can I make one little 1 minute video that's going to go on Instagram or Twitter a day for the next 365 days times 4.5 years? Can you do that? Because if you can't do that, there's no point in trying to spend all that time on your edit or spend all the money on your stream, because nobody cares, because you haven't gotten yourself to the level where you found your voice.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. Just want to thank you, Maximilian, dude, Spooky, Gootecks. Thank you so much for everything you've done
Thank
for this
you.
community.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, you guys, the community, for being here. We'll see you on your Evo.